Good morning, good afternoon. I would like to introduce my project within the larger project that we have been all executing as part of our Visegrad Fund enterprise. The title of the project is Shakespeare and Purgatory, Rewriting the History of the Post-War Reception, and it deals predominantly with the way we reassess and reimagine our history as a result of the knowledge that we acquired following the fall of the Iron Curtain. My aim was to reflect on the ethical complexity of the research into the history of Shakespeare reception in the post-war period and the effects of a large-scale release of literature, documents, testimonies, and archives which cast light on how the communist authorities acted with respect to artists and men of letters, and how they themselves maneuvered their way through the controlled spaces of public discourse. The new historiographies of post-communist countries have to rely on strongly heterogeneous resources, which became available in a rapid and occasionally uncontrollable manner. These include inherited printed histories of the period, which we find censored or biased, the parallel accounts and studies published by underground publishers or emigre authors, which need to be integrated into the mainstream discourse, private archives, damaged, scattered, uncatalogued, guarded by owners or heirs, donated emigre resources, such as, for example, the archive of Ian Cott that I'll be talking about in a moment, and security service records, forged, incomplete, damaged, and sometimes of unclear legal and ethical status. The emergent questions are as follows. What and how have we learned about Shakespeare reception since the system finally crumbled? Should we rely on security police archives to retrace Shakespeare uses under communism? And finally, what is the cultural status of works produced by artists whose biographies disintegrated when classified sources came to light? Well, this list of questions illustrates our feeling of disorientation or dismay while facing this immense material. There are no ready answers to any of these questions, and actually, to contextualize these anxieties, I have reached for the writings of critics who have already tried to problematize the status of documents and archives in our attempts to reconstruct the past. The first citation comes from McGunn. The documents we fashion in the present record the same burden of their own making as documents we inherit from the past. Whereas the second quotation from Derrida, the archive is not only the place for stocking and for conserving the archival content of the past, which would exist in any case. The archivization produces as much as it records the event. And these are precisely the kind of anxieties that were produced and associated with our experience of studying, getting to know, and trying to process into conclusions are the documents that we gradually get into our hands as the system vanishes. Now, interesting enough, those anxieties have been somehow predicted by young Cott, and it is his archive which is a source of a very interesting project that he put together at the beginning of the 70s. This is a project, a stage project of Hamlet dated 1973. In this production that Cott envisioned but probably never ever executed, the backbone is the double casting of the pair of gravediggers and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who work in security police partially for ideological reasons and partially for the prospect of profit. It is the gravediggers who set the plot in motion. The lines of the ghosts are split between the two of them and cut to sustain the illusion of their report's neutrality. Hamlet can hear their dialogue, but he cannot see who is speaking. His main concern is not to become Hamlet, but he does swallow the bait and soon gets caught in his role of an errant avenger. Thus it is the gravediggers, security agents, who are the keepers and ministers of memory, and the truth they reveal, anonymous, uncertain, fragmentary, does hardly any good to Hamlet or to Elsinore. This typically Cotton Hamlet is a play set in the materialist world with no warranties of justice offered by providential forces or destiny. Thus, Kantian truth hangs simply on the identification of manipulative mechanisms which are exposed with no expectations as to the accuracy or relevance of individual histories, princely or otherwise. All in all, the research that has been conducted so far um, leads to the conclusion that the curtain up period might be interpreted as a source of revisionist analysis, striving to reconstruct facts from silences or indoctrinated bias. Both private archives, such as the Yankot archive, and previously classified sources have become a potent source of reassessments as regards Shakespeare's life in post-communist countries and emigre diaspora. None of these sources can be neglected nor readily incorporated into critical discourse. We only begin to work on producing the possibly comprehensive account of ideological complexity of the literary and theatrical uses of Shakespeare in various stages of the post-war history of communist countries. The collaborative research should result in reconstructing the intellectual history of Shakespeare in the East and Central Europe in the post-war decades, and this is precisely the target that I hope shall become uh, one of the aims of the group, as well as one of the targets of the individual research in the upcoming decades. Thank you.